The events of the past few weeks have pushed us to the brink, if not into, an all-out regional war in the Middle East. What can the U.S. do at this point to stop this from spinning out of control?
Well, let's start with October 7. 1,200 people were massacred. 250 hostages were taken, including Americans. Women were brutally raped. And as I said then, I maintain Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. This war has to end.
Well, if you didn't see it, we're going to show it, and we're going to have to talk about it. Let's get busy. Remember, don't like, share, or subscribe. What are you trying to do? Blow up the channel or something? I got enough on my plate. All right, so we have mere weeks until the election. And of course, there are people on the right and there's people on the left. And if you are hard to the right and hard to the left, you have your candidate. You have your team. It's the people that are in that razor-thin, independent, small sect of society, and those disaffected left and right wing folks that have to decide where they want to fall on which side of the line this election cycle. And you have to be informed and watch a wide landscape of news in order to really coalesce all the information together so that you can make a sound decision regarding who you think best serves this country first and the interests of the most amount of people, and you have to put your emotional dispositions to the side. So we have to break down this interview with Bill Whitaker on 60 Minutes, and let's see how deep Kamala goes into the rabbit hole. Let's do it.
We supply Israel with billions of dollars in military aid. And yet Prime Minister Netanyahu seems to be charting his own course. The Biden-Harris administration has pressed him to agree to a ceasefire. He's resisted. You urged him not to go into Lebanon. He went in anyway. Does the U.S. have no sway over Prime Minister Netanyahu?
The work that we do diplomatically with the leadership of Israel is an ongoing pursuit around making clear our principles.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Listen to this controversy here. Former CBS staffers are reportedly calling for an independent investigation after the network aired two different answers to the same question during a 60 Minutes interview with Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, the first version aired during a promotional clip on Sunday night, while the second, shorter answer aired during 60 Minutes on Monday. Listen to both back to back.
It seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We're not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
All right, so let's get into it. This was a week where Kamala was on the media circuit. She went for softball interviews with How Weird, Stern, Colbert on late night. She showed up on a podcast. And if you're watching it and you're leaning into Kamala, you have to be honest with yourself and saying that she doesn't have a hard line on most anything. It's all very wishy-washy. It's not firm and resigned. And say what you want about Trump, at least he knows his positions and he's hard-lined on what he believes. And shame on CBS, because Bill Whitaker was trying and pushing on with her with some hard questions, But I thought I was just crazy when I spoke to other people, and they felt the same way. This whole interview was just cut up. There is some follow-up questions, but not hard-pressing. Not like, and go back, I just watched on my way home. I was driving, I was looking at YouTube while still driving, and concentrating firmly on the road. But listening and watching a little bit of Leslie Stahl interviewing Trump prior to the 2020 election. And then I was watching Biden-Harris talking to Nora O'Donnell. And you could see a sharp contrast in the two interview styles. Leslie Stahl was leaning into Trump. It was vitriolic. It was antagonistic. It was adversarial. And on the Nora O'Donnell side with Biden-Harris, it was just very inquisitive. It was interrogative, but it wasn't inconsiderate. And now she's being pressed, and she is wishy-washy all over the place, especially with our strongest ally in the Middle East, which is Israel. If this was 9/11 and they look at October 7th as their 9/11, they are going to plow through everybody in their way in order to protect their way of life against state-sponsored terrorism and we deem terrorist organizations, Hezbollah, Hamas. And I'm sure they're not targeting civilian towns and people. It is just, unfortunately, the ugly business of war. And we have to try to stay out of this while saying, hey, listen, we have to try to see if we can get parties to the table so that this can end, because it's in our and the interests of the Middle East. But she can't even answer these questions directly. I'm sure I, with the little knowledge, the dangerous amount of knowledge that I have, could probably answer these questions better. So let's get a little bit more of a closer look on how Bill is trying to press her on some of these things, and let's break it down.
Do we have a real close ally in Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think, with all due respect, the better question is, do we have an important alliance between the American people and the Israeli people? And the answer to that question is yes. And
while the war in the Middle East has dominated recent headlines, it's the economy that most concerns American voters this election year, as always.
And of course, 60 Minutes and Bill Whitaker have to get involved with these audio overtones over Kamala, because they have to try to practically interpret for you what is going on during this interview when it should have just run unedited, unfiltered, for all the world to see. As somebody online put it, shrinkflation is so bad that a 60-minute interview is now down to what we're available to see, which is only 20 minutes.
There are lots of signs that the American economy is doing very well. Better than most countries, I think. But the American people don't seem to be feeling it. Groceries are 25% higher, and people are blaming you and Joe Biden for that. Are they wrong?
we now have historic low unemployment in America among all groups of people. We now have an economy that is thriving by all macroeconomic measures. And, to your point, prices are still too high. And I know that, and we need to deal with it, which is why part of my plan, you mentioned groceries. Part of my plan is what we must do to bring down the price of groceries.
Harris says she'll press Congress to pass a federal ban on price gouging for food and groceries, but details are yet to be defined.
You want to expand the child tax credit.
Yes, I do.
You want to give tax breaks to first-time home buyers.
Yes.
And people starting small businesses.
Correct.
But it is estimated by the Nonpartisan Committee for Responsible Federal Budget that your economic plan would add $3 trillion to the federal deficit over the next decade. How are you going to pay for that?
Okay, so the other economists that have reviewed my plan versus my opponent and determined that my economic plan would strengthen America's economy, his would weaken it.
But
My plan, Bill, if you don't mind, my plan is about saying that when you invest in small businesses, you invest in the middle class, and you strengthen America's economy. Small businesses are part of the backbone of America's economy.
This segment of the interview, one, is, again, cut up. Two, is so tone deaf. The answer to Bill's question, coming right out of the question, was essentially, or should have been. It is unfortunate that with all the macroeconomic metrics, the economy is evidently better on the measured side of metrics. The stock market, unemployment, real wages. Those things are starting to improve. It is too bad that most people are still feeling the weight of coming out of the pandemic, in that there was a tax on all people with the price of groceries and energy, electric and gas, the price of loans and debt service, which has gone through the roof. And it is unfortunate that people are still feeling the aftermath of what was the pandemic as we've gone through a 3 and 4 year recovery. And then she should have gone into what she's going to do to fix it. You are not going to legislate price gouging. The real question is this: what company is price gouging? Who is it? What should the real price of groceries and energies be then? How do you intend to fix that? And Bill, I think, tried pushing on her. We didn't really get any answers there. But to his credit, he tried. The second piece to that, which was child tax credits and business credits. I don't even know what she's talking about. Well, what about me? That's not going to help benefit me. I don't have children where I can get a tax credit. I'm not going to be a first-time home buyer. I'm not starting up a new business here. So where do I see economic relief? So you really have offered a plan that is so razor thin to a very small amount of the American people. That does not work. So say what you want about Trump, but when he talks about drill baby drill and bringing down the price of energy and threatening other countries with tariffs to tax them because of what they're charging us for their goods and services coming across foreign borders into our country, those are actually real things that could potentially impact our economy. Real thing. You could see the hard clips in this part of the interview. Why can't she just admit to the obvious? At the time, the idea seemed plausible and reasonable to loosen some of these restrictions at the border. It may not have been the single best idea that we came up with, because obviously people took advantage of coming across the border illegally. There are people that are coming for asylum, too much so that we cannot handle all these people coming across the border. So should we have been a little bit tighter on our restrictions? The answer is probably yes. And we tried working bipartisan, but the Republicans weren't meeting us on the fronts that we really believed with respect to immigration. Now we've got a situation that is so out of control, we had to tamp down, and we have really stemmed the tide of people coming across the border. I mean, there's so many better ways to answer this question and admit to everything that we actually see what is happening. They have now tightened up and restricted border access, and now illegal crossings have dropped dramatically. Trump couldn't have stopped the bill. The bill was being stopped by Republicans themselves. Why? Border Patrol will take anything in terms of resources, more money, more help, more hands. They are all for it. That's why they wanted it. But why did the Republicans stop it? Because it still allowed for too much migration, immigration, still allowed for too much asylum, and didn't have enough money in this in order to really give the necessary resources to Border Patrol and prevent the large people coming to the border and seeking asylum. So it was allowing too many people still to come, and still too many people seeking asylum, and not causing these people to stay in Mexico. But again, it's real simple. They could have rolled out, and Kamala could have even done it now, executive actions to stop the mass migration at the border and not create this whole problem of letting in fentanyl and letting in cartel and gangs and other people that are draining from the system, where you have illegal immigrants being held up in great hotels with cell phones and food and walking past homeless veterans in the street. You're going to vote? Make sure you continue to flush out all the facts before pull the trigger.